Hi, this is Scott Ware, the publisher of Radiance Magazine, which you can find at radiancemm.com. And you're watching this on Xpnsion Network. And I have with me Walter Zajac, the empowerment psychic. Walter, how are you?
I'm good, Scott. How are you?
I'm great too. Thank you. And thanks for
Thank
being
you.
here.
Yeah, thanks for the opportunity. I'm excited.
Absolutely. You know, one thing, I've talked to psychics, I've talked to therapists, and you're a combination of those things. You have a book that you've written that has shared your life where you actually experienced sexual abuse. Today, you were able to help people with those kinds of issues as a psychic and an empowerment coach, using even bringing in NLP and such. You taught yourself, and I imagine the help of others, how to regain your ability to receive and receive pleasure, sexual pleasure, from a difficult upbringing.
Yeah.
Yeah. Could you speak to that a little bit? Because I know there's people out there that are like, okay, I've been to therapy, or maybe I need to with regards to that. Sexual abuse was in my past. But you're a psychic as well, and you bring that extra level of help to people. How does that benefit people when you're having these remote sessions with people?
First of all, I want to say that it's not a scientific survey, but in my impression, about 70% of my clients have experienced childhood sexual abuse. It's just rampant. It's so incredibly common.
Yes.
And it's something that really destroys the individual child internally, emotionally, gives them a twisted perspective on sexuality, causes them to be highly sexually aware from a very young age. I've talked to women and men who, from the age of 3, who were having sexual experiences, and in my case, it was 4. 2 women would crawl into bed with me and share their sexuality with me, encourage me to play. And what happens to people who experience that is that it becomes a really twisted emotional thing where love is involved, because almost always the perpetrator is a parent or a close relative or someone who is a super close friend, and there's love involved. And so because there's love involved, and yet it becomes a deep, dark secret, people can't talk about it. You can't talk about it with anybody. And if you do, they'll even say things like, well, you're just making that up. That didn't happen to you. So
Sure.
What I do is allow people, first of all, to just acknowledge, yeah, that happened. That happened, because nobody's listening, right? And then helping them realize that, okay, you got a lot of company. It's happening to a lot of people, and there are ways to help. NLP is a beautiful branch of psychology that allows people to overcome things that are hindering them, that hold them back. And I use my psychic ability to tune into what they're really feeling and fine tune it. Excuse me, go ahead.
No, that's so many great things that you're bringing to your sessions. NLP stands for neuro-linguistic programming. How do you work with that with people with the psychic abilities? I imagine they work together.
Yeah, as the empowerment psychic, that's my brand, my handle. I bring in NLP techniques all the time. I tune into, well, you're feeling a tremendous amount of emotional insecurity, and as a result, you're a rescuer, and you choose lovers, partners who are emotionally unavailable, and it's not making you happy. Sure. And then I'll talk about, well, here's how you could get into a different routine of how to relate to yourself, how to talk to yourself, internal dialogue, just, all kinds of things come up in the moment in the psychic reading, and then that's the empowerment part.
Well, and I want to get into your book that you've written that essentially is the story of your life, even though names and dates have been changed.
Names and dates, and not dates, but locations, actually. Names,
sure.
Locations, and in some cases, relationships, just to protect people's privacy and innocence.
Yeah. What you went through a lot as a kid, and so you can speak, and I know the sort of resurrection you as a human being has had as a sexual being, because about 20 years ago, I think you said you had to reteach yourself how to receive pleasure. And that involved Tantra as well. Is that
Yeah,
correct?
I began studying tantric sex. I bought a video and watched it over and over and over, a video that literally talked about that, how to bring spirituality and openness and pleasure. You know, tantric anything is, in my understanding, enjoying it to the extreme and enjoying it for long periods of time. So a man training himself in tantric sex is all about allowing enjoyment and then building up stamina. Right.
Sure.
And then
Well,
in that building up, I ended up, and I think most people do, having a completely different awareness of what sex is and actually having a sexual education, which most of us don't get. We're fumblers.
yeah, that occurred to me because I would say most of us probably come out of childhood and adolescence with a certain amount of sexual dysfunction, regardless of if you remembered experiencing something, if you experienced abuse. But certainly because we don't have that kind of great conversation in a wholesome way, people start to develop their own ideas, their own path, if you will, and you can find yourself in a relationship and wondering why this or that is happening, why it's not the fullest experience it could be, the most wholesome experience it could be. Pornography being pervasive and having its effects that are known very well. It sounds like most of us would do well to relearn or simply remember who we truly are and let that come through, as opposed to what we were unconsciously bringing into our lives through the years.
Yeah.
Sounds like you could help anybody in that respect.
Absolutely. And then another thing that I love to do is to help people in relationships, which is really all about how do we communicate, how we speak to each other. And again, for the same reason, when did you or me or anybody ever get a lesson on how to have a relationship? We're fumblers. We don't know what we're doing. And most of us think, well, if I love him enough, he's going to love me back, right? But it doesn't work.
There's all that codependency and dysfunction just sort of flying out there with people not being aware of it so much. So yeah, it sounds like couples could come to you as well. And I just want to say, people can find you at psychicwalter.com. Isn't that right?
Yes, please.
Okay. They want to be, while they're watching the interview, if they want to check out your offerings there. Okay, so going back into your story, the name of your book is They Came Beyond Deja Vu, a novel based on a true story by Walter Zajac.
That's me.
And this goes, that's you. And this goes into your story, even though names have been changed. What is the overview of this novel? Why, and I know that people can get this from your website or Amazon.
Sure. Well, on my website, there are 5 scenes that you can read or listen to, because the book is available also in audio form, in Kindle and paperback and audio. So it's a novel based on my own time in an orphanage in Germany after World War II, where I had 2 very influential but imaginary friends from the spirit world who 33 years later became real people in my life. And both girls would undergo horrific events in their physical lives, which I experienced repeatedly back in my childhood along with them, and in detail, like I said, long before they were born, even 15 years before they were born, and details that I was able to tell both of them, which they had never shared with anyone before.
So
and
let me get this straight.
Yeah.
So to survive the horrific events and situations you were in the orphanage, you created imaginary friends, but you saw horrific events even with your imaginary friends? That must have been
the horrific events that they would go through, and I'll just be real briefly. The first one that I encountered had been in a horrifying accident in a truck where she ended up being disfigured and horrifying scars on her face, and had, when I met her, had 17 operations to correct the disfigurement because her head had gotten crushed. And I was able to tell her details about that accident that she had never shared with another person. Nothing. 5 things I was able to tell her that she was afraid to share those things with other people because they were in the spirit world. And they were things that actually happened that she just didn't want to tell anybody.
And you shared them with her, and for a while there was amazement, but then afterwards there was it was challenging for her to.
In both cases, both ladies really opened up because, you know, on a spiritual level, we recognize each other. And in their case, it was from before they were physically born. And yet we do have memories of life before we came into this world and previous lives, if people believe in that. I do. And so they recognize me. It's like, wow, I know you, right? And they had never felt anything so big. And of course, yeah, for me, it was, yeah, I've known you all my life since I was 5. But for them, they really, after a few weeks, quickly got to a place of, this is too freaky. I can't explain this to myself. I can't tell my friends who you are or my parents. And how do you know this stuff? And how, like, is this maybe a conspiracy? And maybe I was messing with them, right? And for me, it was just insane rejection because I know you, right? And of course, a lot of love feelings were involved, even though that they didn't become love relationships, but I know you, right? And then it was the biggest rejection I had ever felt. And wonderfully, it was the thing that was the catalyst that caused me to realize I need some help. And so I started seeing a psychologist. And wonderfully, I found a psychologist who is the daughter of a Toltec shaman, like Don Miguel Ruiz, Don Juan, of the teachings of Don Juan, Carlos Castaneda. And she had had experiences that were just completely other worlds and other realities with her father. He had taken her on them. And she was the first person to tell me, Walter, baby, you took care of yourself. This is how you survived the orphanage experience. Because in my case, I was sent to an orphanage at 6 years old. I knew my parents and had vivid memories of my life before. And I didn't know why I didn't know even I was going to an orphanage. For me, it was a train ride.
You know, you must have asked for a really incredible wild ride in this incarnation, because most of us, we create imaginary friends. I imagine we create, it's a safe space, it's fun. You don't normally see tragedies occur in a person's life who's going to be born later. When did you realize what you were seeing was someone that was going to exist, or was it just when you got older? How did you find them? How did that work?
Yeah, well, I'll start with the first one. And that was, I call her the accident girl. Maria is her name in the book. And I had been speaking to her for a couple of years on a day job. This was after my music career. And it was on a day job where I had to call to give prices and information to salespeople at the office where she worked. And she had been answering the phone, and all I ever heard was, Voletsky Industries, how may I help you, right? And then one moment, please. Mm-hmm. And beautiful, lovely voice, always touched my heart. And then one day I made her laugh with something just crazy ridiculous, and she couldn't stop laughing. And you know that when we laugh with somebody, we connect. We feel them, we connect hearts, we connect on the spiritual level. And in those moments, we both recognized each other. And then that very day, we started talking personally. You know, I said, wow, all I've ever heard you say is one moment, please. And then I got to know her. And then about 3 weeks later, she said, and this was only a phone relationship, it was long distance. And 3 weeks later, she said, there's something I need to tell you. I was in a horrific accident. And she began to describe the accident. I finished the story for her. And then over the next couple of weeks, I was able to tell her 5 things that she had never told anybody else.
And initially, what was her reaction to that?
WTF, right? It's like, where do I put that? And me too. Right. And, you know, because because of the being sent to an orphanage, I lost my power. And for up until that point, I had seen my life from the perspective of a victim. And my first thought was, the universe is messing with me. Why is this happening to me?
Right.
But then pretty quickly, my psychologist helped me realize that, no, dude, you're good. You took care of yourself.
So you had these experiences, you felt the rejection from them eventually, which felt really bad for
horrifying,
you.
Yeah.
Horrifying. And then but that was what the catalyst that caused you to seek therapy.
Yeah.
which then opened things up for you in a new way.
Yeah. It's the very thing that, number one, made me realize, you know, I had had hundreds of dreams that had come true. And I always had had information for my own self and for other people that came from the psychic world. And people had told me for years, dude, you should do that professionally. And I never had wanted to.
Yeah.
And she made me realize in actual fact that this is real. You are psychic.
Yep.
And that it's something that has benefited you so far. And if you allow yourself to own it, you can build a whole new life with it, from it.
Oh.
Yeah.
I just want to share on your website, it says, for nearly 10 years now, Walter Zajac, truly one of the best California psychics, has given me brilliant intuitive guidance, advice, and inspiration that has been deeply formative in the personal and business decisions I've made. He always helps me tune into and recognize the deepest truths of my heart. Time and again, I return to Walter for empowerment and to guide me to reconnect to my own love and wisdom. That guy's the principal of the United Kingdom College of Hypnosis and Hypnotherapy in London. That's a very good testimonial.
It is. And that was written, what, I think 3 years ago. So he's still working with me. It's been about 13 years and he's international. The college is growing massively, and he's ever more happy in his life, and he just thinks I'm a god. So I like it.
Nice. That's good. High praise. And Amber from Los Angeles says, if you're looking for a psychic medium that's going to empower you with insightful advice and help you through difficult times, there's no doubt in my mind that you should call Walter. He's one of the best California psychics for sure, and just a great psychic. One thing I know, and anyone would know after talking with you for a few minutes, is you're not just the woo-woo variety in the sense of, oh, I see this coming for you, but you get into their psychology, you get into particularly helping people with people who've been victims of sexual abuse. How much does someone having a session with you feel the psychic part?
From the very beginning, with every new client, before I call, they make an appointment and I call them. And before I call, I'll take about 15 minutes and meditate and tune into the 7 layers of their aura.
You already connect. Yeah.
Each of which correspond to a different aspect of their lives. And in most cases, I'll give them that information first, which takes 5, 6, maybe 10 minutes. And they're wowed. He's like, wow, you know me. Right. And so then that establishes credibility right away. And then that establishes, oh yeah, this guy's psychic.
Right. And it's on your website, love is one of the categories. I love it, under psychic reading, healing, and testimony. What does love mean to you?
Love. I believe it's a translation. It's another aspect of what the Chinese call qi, life energy force. To me, well, and in the Christian tradition, you find it in the Bible, God is love. And to me, love is spiritual connection. I have found that when I connect with somebody on a spiritual level, that love is there. Some form of love, you know, it could be small to really huge and overwhelming. But connection includes love. And when you love, it automatically includes connection. So to me, love is tuning in, being a part of the spiritual world and seeing the universe and God in each other, and admiring and really adoring that part of who we are. And then also what I have noticed in studying some psychology and in doing this work for 18 years is that when we fall in love, it's our 5-year-old, it's the little child in us that's falling in love, because that's the sweet, precious, innocent part of us. And that's who we see in the other person that we just think is so beautiful. And it's who we are when we're in love. And when psychologists say that whenever a situation is emotional, the only thing we have to offer that situation is our 5-year-old. And relationships are emotional 24/7, even if we're talking about, you know, doing the dishes and somebody gives the wrong answer, it's emotional.
Well, it's funny you mentioned the 5-year-old, and in some ways, some of our growth gets stunted back to a certain age because of something that happened. But in a lot of ways, what I want to reflect back on that is the innocence in us. It's beautiful to be able to look at the world as a 5-year-old in that sense, where we can see the wonder and beauty as a child. Or, so I know it's very important to be youthful in our outlook on life and not get so cynical, right?
Yeah. Yeah. And then especially in relationships, what I have seen in my own past and in so many, maybe most of, well, definitely most of my clients, is that it's not long after a relationship starts, especially if two people move in together or get married, they begin real quickly to take each other for granted. They stop trying. They stop seeing the beauty of the other person. They stop seeing the reasons that they fell in love. And in order to make a relationship successful, my feeling is you have to retain that. You have to always see those qualities that made me fall in love with her, and to share that and to appreciate and to build her up and to bring her into a place where she feels really good about herself.
I love that. I agree. And I would also say, and probably it fits in what you're saying, is everyone is always expanding. Everyone is always renewing. And it's wonderful to be able to see that and experience that with the person, to not just see them as who they were.
Yeah.
Sometimes we take a snapshot of them and make an assumption or say, hey, they're always going to be this way. I don't want that to change. When in fact, we're all always changing. We're all always expanding. And so to be able to behold that, whatever is there in that moment, and see the magnificence of that person is a beautiful thing and a loving thing.
I love to share with people that I believe the best way to sustain a relationship, have it remain beautiful, is to follow the 4 principles in the 4 agreements by Don Miguel Ruiz. And real quickly, the 4 agreements are: number 1, to be impeccable with your word. If you're going to say something, say it with love, make sure that it's honest and the truth, and ask yourself, does it need to be said? Right? But always honest and with love. Second, to not take things personally. If he or she is having a bad day, it doesn't necessarily mean that it's because of what I did. It doesn't mean that she's lost interest in me or that she's mad at me. It means she's going through a hard day. Let her have that. Let her have that. Thirdly, don't make assumptions. Instead of making an assumption, ask. When we think back on the arguments that we have had, almost always, once we get to a place where we're talking again, one of us will say, oh, you didn't mean it that way, right? And we had a huge fight and so much pain based on an assumption, right? And so we have to ask, what do you mean? It's that simple. Don't make an assumption. And then the last thing is, do your best. Always do your best. If you do those 4 things, a relationship will sustain itself. Of course, you need the cooperation of the other person. But usually if we raise the bar, one of us in the relationship, the other one will respond, especially if raising that bar is all about, oh my God, I love you. You're so cool. Which we need to sustain, no matter, even if we're 50 years together, we have to sustain that. Otherwise, why be there? Why be there?
I love that. I met Don Miguel Ruiz once.
Oh, cool.
I actually interviewed his son, Junior. And it was wonderful. And I love that advice. In fact, that sounds like a book or a post, that you could, or, collaborate with him. I don't know, but that's great to use those 4 assumptions. And maybe the 5th one. What was the 5th one?
4 agreements. I can't remember. Yeah, I can't remember what the 5th agreement is at the moment. I'm having a brain fart.
I can't either. Well, it's funny. I even said 4 assumptions. That would be a good one. Here are the 4 assumptions of love you should not do.
Yeah.
I love that advice. Tell me something someone's experienced with you recently where you brought your psychic abilities into it, because therapy's great and so important. And then you bring that extra layer. What is some of that? And I even chose this backdrop for you. Kind of a mystical looking one.
Mystical.
What has someone experienced from you mystically that you can bring? What example of that can you mention?
An example of how I'm helping them with something practical, but I use my psychic ability. Is that what you mean? Just last night and the night before, I did NLP sessions on 2 women where I was doing the technique, and this particular technique that I love to do is having the person imagine they're holding a pillow, but that pillow is their 5-year-old sitting on their lap with their back towards them. And I talk to them, you know about NLP, you bring in all 5 senses, and then I'm going through the technique, and it takes 15-20 minutes. And as I'm going through the technique, I'm feeling what she's feeling. And then I'm able to say the appropriate thing at the moment. That, you know, as part of it in that technique is telling your inner child, I love you. I love you, little Walter. You're never going to be alone again, little Walter, right? And then saying the right thing at the moment comes with what I'm feeling from them. Right? If I'm feeling that, even if they're not crying yet, then I will say something that either soothes them or triggers more crying, because one of my favorite things to think about is if I haven't made them cry, and I mean this in a good way, right? With that sense of, oh, that's so beautiful, then I haven't done my job, right? I haven't really reached them if they don't cry, right? So, yeah. And then the crying is release. That's why it's important. That's why I feel it's part of my goal, because most people have a tendency to hold things in. We're embarrassed by the things that we're feeling. And one of the beautiful things I learned from my psychologist and have found over and over is it takes about 10 times more energy to suppress feelings than it does to just cry and let it out. And so we only have so much energy every day. And if we're spending that energy suppressing feelings, we don't have much left for our life or for other people or the world.
Well, I get your levels of love and wisdom in this. You seem like a safe place to go to discuss these things.
That's what I try to be. And especially because I've experienced so much horrific stuff, it's really important to me to make other people feel safe, because I know what it's like to not.
Do you ever come at it from the point of view of the divine masculine and the divine feminine within all of us, and the need to rejoin and have that be a beautiful joining, particularly coming from sexual distortion based on traumatic events that have happened? Does that enter into it?
For people to find the balance of the male and female within themselves, I think is what you're saying. Absolutely. Yes. Yeah. It's not something I focus on a lot, because I find it a lot more effective to bring them in a relationship with their 5-year-old. Because, you know, Einstein said over 100 years ago, there is no time, and that's been proven scientifically ever since. And so 5-year-old Walter still exists, and I can have a relationship with him. And 5-year-old Walter, I've heard it said by over 20 psychic mediums, both famous and working Joes, and that is, we are the wisest we will ever be when we're 5 years old and younger. So I asked little Walter for advice, and I have a conversation, and little Walter, he and I joked about things. I have companionship and humor, and that's what I encourage people to do. And then sure, you know, in terms of sexual healing, any of the desires that we have that cross the traditional boundaries of what male and female should be, they're healthy. They're healthy, you know. And I love the fact that the youngest generations on our planet are talking in terms of sexual fluid and pansexual, right? Where it just doesn't matter what you like to do or what kind of parts you like on a person.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. Love is love.
Yeah. Yeah.
And when people are considering coming to you for a reading, let's say they want just a typical psychic reading, and you can give that to them. How does that look different than the other kinds of sessions you'd have? You have people just saying, what's coming up in my life? What can I look out for? How do those sessions go?
Very well, because of, you know, establishing credibility and then bringing them to a place where they are already in tune with spirit world, in tune with themselves. But really, almost every session is about, that's my doorbell. I can't do anything about that at the moment. I can't muffle it. Sure. I think it's an Amazon delivery. Real life comes into play, right? Yeah. But almost all of my sessions are about love relationship, almost always. Sometimes career, sometimes How do I get along with my mom, right? Sometimes, is my grandpa going to live much longer? But more often than not, most of the session, if not the entire session, is about love relationship. And
Well, you,
that's what seems to be most important in life to people.
you mentioned establishing credibility. Is that because you're able to give them some evidentiary
Yeah,
information?
because I give them the 7 layers of the aura, each of which correspond to a different aspect of their personality and their life, what they've experienced. Yeah.
You're letting them know this is what I see, and they can just go, oh, okay, he's right on. He knows, he can
Yeah.
definitely see
Yeah.
those
And
aspects.
then, once they hear those things, then they're automatically in a spiritual place, because in recognizing that I'm seeing them, the truth of who they are, they go to a spiritual place because I'm there already.
Good. Okay.
Yeah.
And then that can make it a little easier to say, because I imagine a lot of people who have sexual trauma are going to say, that's just too hard. I don't want to go there. I'm living my life just fine. I figured out how to dance around it or keep it at bay or resist it or put it in this box. What would you say to someone who's saying those things? Their mind.
Essentially, the reason that they're calling me, making an appointment with me, is that way of doing things isn't working anymore.
It's showing up in their lives in disruptive ways, perhaps.
Yeah, self-destructive, that happens, and especially playing a really negative role in the relationship that they're in and or the relationship that they want. Yeah.
So maybe they're cognizant enough where they can see that, or maybe they just know, I have things that are not working in my life that I suspect are rooted in some traumas I experienced as a child.
Mm-hmm.
How would you start with them?
I would talk about what those experiences were and talk about how I feel they affected that person, and
Sure.
then bring in immediately ways in which they can empower themselves with changing their internal dialogue, changing how they perceive of themselves, changing the things that they say. What I mean by internal dialogue is that it's really pretty common for people to be self-judgmental and self-critical because that's what they grew up with. It's what they know is most familiar and therefore somehow comfortable, even though it's twisted. And most people, especially women, are just amazingly hard on themselves. And so I talk about, well, just think about the fact that if you had a best friend, and most women are this way, not everybody, and then the men who call me too are generally, really very sensitive and kind and loving and considerate. And these people who call me generally are really good friends. They really care about other people that they're friends with. And if they have a really good friend, they're going to treat them beautifully, going to encourage them and praise them. If their friend makes a mistake, they forgive them and say, it's okay, you didn't mean it. But they don't do that for themselves. So that's the internal dialogue. So I go into specifics of, if you would do that for your friend, why don't you deserve it? Do it for you.
There you go. Yeah, some people, pleasers, if you will please other people more than they please themselves. Inside, there's self-judgment conversation that they don't know any differently. I imagine you can help people get outside of it and realize they can be having beautiful conversations with themselves,
Yeah,
empowering themselves. And that's a new technique to learn. That's a new skill because many of us are not used to that, right?
and it's a habit really to learn, right? Because the automatic response is, oh man, I messed up, and people, oh my God, I hear it so often. I'm so mad at myself. How the hell is that going to help? Don't be mad at yourself, right? That doesn't serve you. Be happy that now you know, right? You had this experience. It's one of the basic principles of NLP, and that is there are no mistakes. Every choice that we make, we chose to experience that in order to learn what we learned. And if we hadn't made that choice, we wouldn't know what we know. We wouldn't we wouldn't have the wisdom to know that that was a bad choice. So don't be down on yourself. Praise the fact that, wow, I'm glad I chose that because now I know.
Yeah, because we can all go there and start to beat ourselves up for not getting something quicker. But the fact is, there's only ever one present moment. So anytime you can wake up and get conscious to it, doesn't matter how old you are, just be grateful, be there in that moment, love yourself. And there's so much freedom in just being in the moment, not in the past and not in fear of the future, right?
That's another thing that I bring in my psychic sessions, is the fact that the present moment is all that exists. You cannot choose to have fun tomorrow at 2:30, not until tomorrow at 2:30 comes. The present moment is all you have. And it's something that I hear, you know, I'm a psychic medium. I talk to dead people, as they say in Hollywood. And there too, I ask that person, the deceased person, for 3 things that connect them with the person on the phone. And I prove to them that it really is Uncle Bob before we go on. So otherwise the message is not meaningful. But consistently, and I see this in books about near-death experiences, consistently the message is, God, life is too short. I didn't tell you enough that I love you. I didn't spend enough time with you. I didn't show you enough that I love you. And I didn't have enough fun. I didn't have enough fun. And that message of, if you're going to have fun, if you're going to have happy, now, be happy, now, right? And then no matter how old they were when they died, whether they were in their 90s or the youngest I've tuned into was somebody who was, I think, 12. No matter how old they were, life was too short. I didn't have enough time. And especially not enough time to love and have fun. To me, that's the message. Love, 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 fun, 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 fun. And if we focus on those things, life is happy. And if we focus on now, doing that now. And for me, it's like, if I'm going to do the dishes, I'll figure out some way to make it fun.
Excellent advice. Excellent advice. And if anyone needs any, you know, support for the fact that, you know, you are someone who can talk to them about their sexual traumas, all they have to do is read your book and know that you've been there.
Yeah. And, you know, for me, the book, I wrote it as an inspiration for people to realize that other people have gone through this and that it's common. You know, first of all, psychic experiences are common, because I wrote the book from a perspective of, this was just everyday life for me. It wasn't living in a psychic world. It was everyday life. And that's what all of us experience. I really believe all of us have psychic experiences. We all have had some kind of a deja vu, you know, and we have dreams that come true. And then also the sexual abuse, which we've talked about. And then just generally the sense of loving yourself, accepting yourself for what you have been through, and recognizing that, yes, it was unique, and yet everybody out there is going through this tough stuff. My story is dramatic, but I have also found that I haven't met anybody that doesn't have deep, deep pain. And my pain is no bigger or impressive than anybody else's, right? Everybody I know has deep, deep pain. And that's what I want to do, to help them get over that and to empower themselves, which really is based on, if I love myself really passionately, then the things that I'm automatically going to attract into my life and want in my life are going to reflect that I love Walter and I want the best for him.
Beautifully said. You know, how can people, how can people reach out to you again? It's psychicwalter.com.
Psychicwalter.com. Yeah, and you can, there are videos about what to look for in a psychic, how to have a good reading, and you can find information about my book, more information about me, and then click on any appointment link and you will see my prices. And then I will be offering, in conjunction with my ad, when this issue comes out, I will be offering 50% off to anybody that has the code from the magazine, and you can use that for yourself or to buy a gift certificate as a Christmas or Hanukkah or a Kwanzaa present for somebody.
Or anytime they're watching this,
anytime.
interview.
Yes, sirree. Yes, that's right. Easter.
Okay, yeah. You can find it at radiancemmm.com. Walter, thank you for what you're doing. Thank you for sharing from what you've learned from your pain and your journey, and helping make the world a better place, helping free people from sexual trauma so that they can have wonderful, beautiful experiences as a human in all ways.
Yeah.
This life.
Thank you. I appreciate your gratitude of me. Thank you so much.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Thank you. And thank you, everybody, for watching. Bye-bye.
Thank you, Scott.